I'm John Sargent, and it's December 2021. We're in San Francisco at the Fairmont Hotel at the California Alarm Association.
I'm Charlie Darsch with the Security Museum.
Nathan Rousted from Wayne Alarm Systems.
And I'm Ralph Sevenor from Wayne Alarm Systems and the Security Museum. We're delighted to have you here. We've been collecting artifacts for over 25 years, and we saw the need to really put all the people together that have created such a great industry. A lot to learn in this. Thank you very much for attending, and we look forward to your comments in the future as well. Thank you.
Hi, I'm John Sargent, here with Charlie Darsch. We're at the California Alarm Association in the San Francisco Fairmont Hotel, talking today with Mike Matson, with Matson Alarm, down in Fresno.
Fresno, good old Fresno.
Yeah, Mike, I'd like to start out before the alarm industry. If you could just tell us a little bit about when you were young, what did you kind of want to do in life? Did you have any particular thoughts?
Well, I came from a pretty large family. I say pretty large. There was 5 boys. And so both my parents worked. My dad was a preacher, which very few people know, but and he was a very kind man, worked for the social department. And they got into a marketing of selling Slim Jims. Now, Slim Jims were a exercise machine way back in like 72. But they were selling those, and the copies came in, and so that kind of all the money went out of that. So they were looking for the next best thing. And my dad met this guy that was, and I forget his name, but he said, "Hey, I got a great thing," and they thought that it'd be the biggest thing in the 80s, and it was an alarm system, and it was a wireless alarm system, and it goes back to, it was all secure, and it was the little self-contained unit that you turned on, and you would go out the door. And you had door contacts on it. They were all wireless, and it's going to be a very simple installation. And so they had the concept of where we're at today back then. The problem was there was no money into the engineering of it. So you had these transmitters that, and it did have a delay in an instant. So at night you could flip it to instant, and that would turn it on. But if you open the door, every time you open the door, a little 9-volt battery, it would put a drain on it. Okay. So you're constantly changing the batteries.
9-volt battery.
9-volt battery. This goes way back.
Yeah.
And so we had meters, and my brother John, who has passed away, but he was working for a machine shop that my mom worked for, stacking weights. And he quit that to go install these for my dad. And my mom and dad were selling, he was installing. And I used to help him after school. And we'd go out and we had a meter, and you'd hook it up, and you'd go to the door and you'd tune it, and when it hit the right frequency, it'd kick the meter on and stuff. So it was a failure in a big way because it was too much maintenance. And it wasn't that simple where you could put it in and do it yourself.
Out of curiosity, about how many of those were sold, if you think?
We sold about 60 of them. And then the manufacturer, and I'm guessing 60, it might have been 100.
Oh, that's all right.
But back when nobody wanted an alarm, but they were selling them. And then All Secure, it was a Chinese company that was making it, and they kind of like bailed out. So then we changed the name to it and did a different manufacturer. It's called Home Safety Guard. And it was the first one was a big metal box. The second one was kind of like a little wood box with the front. It looked really cool. And our little emblem, that was, my dad had drawn that up, and so that's where that emblem came from.
So actually, that's back in the 70s again?
70, about 73, 74. they put everything they had into the business and they lost everything. So us being boys with nothing to do, we weren't going to college. We just didn't have the finances to go to college and everything. And so we thought, well, we'll do hardwired systems. And we had no idea how to do it. Valley Alarm was huge because they were the only one. And then Central Alarm came up, and so they wouldn't help us because they didn't want us to be their competition.
You become, sure.
And so we had to learn everything ourselves and figure everything out ourselves. And for about 2 years, we went back to all these systems that didn't work and replaced them with systems that did work. And out of our own pocket, but we didn't have any money to do it. So it was like we'd sell a system, buy parts, and go do this and fix. And when we were doing that, it was very costly to us because we weren't making any money, but we didn't have any money. So it's like if we didn't get a paycheck, if we got $20 on the weekend, we figured ourselves we were lucky.
Wow.
And we started figuring out to do the central station. So we set up our own central station at an answering service. And
So originally, those early systems were just local. They weren't monitored.
we were pushing the monitoring then.
Oh,
Even
because-
back when you had this,
Yes, and then and it was
where was they tied into? Just a phone line?
well, Delta had that little, it was a big metal box, and it had a little slide deal on it, and you could put in the phone number, and then it had A, B, and C, and those were different codes that you could set up for them, just a relay. So, and it would be, we set one was medical emergency, 3 was, no, I take that back. It's been a long time. We set up, 3 was burglary, 2 was medical, and 1 was fire. And so we set this up in our central station, it was a central station, but it was through an answering service. And it was really funny because every once in a while you'd get a runaway dialer.
Yes.
And so we would go to the central station, we would listen, and you could hear it beeping out the code. And then we had these flip charts.
Oh, yeah.
And so we used to flip it up to whatever, if it's count number 100, we'd flip to 100 and we would know who it was, and we'd go out there, and that's how we captured our
That's amazing.
runaway dialers. So when we first did it, we started, we did, 1 was our first one, 5 was the next one, 10 was the next one, all the way up to 1,000. But what we did it that way because there's a big racks of flip charts.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so we
There's a lot of manual work in
oh
this
my,
thing.
it was pretty incredible. And then it's like we hit the 1,000. It's like, okay, now we need to go back and fill in. So now we went from 1, we went to 2, and then to 3, then to 4. We already had 5, so then we went 6, and then 7, and 8. We started filling up, and me and Larry, we said if we could just get to 1,000 accounts, we both have it made. We'd both be driving Porsches. We'd have it made, but there's a lot of hurdles and a lot of things to do. So.
In that sort of an operation, how many people were involved at that time?
Well,
Between your either your salespeople, your installers, and those who were-
Larry sold for the long time because he was the salesperson. Me and John used to install, and every once in a while we'd hire one of my friends to help us and stuff like that. So that's how we were installing. I installed for 17 years. At one point, Larry would sell the job. I would go out and get the house, drill the house, and get it ready to go. And he'd come by long enough to help me pull the wires, and then he'd go out to get the next job, and I'd finish the installation. What we used to do is an installation a day. So I mean,
So this
we
is a family, truly.
It truly is a family operation right from the beginning.
And then, so then we started figuring out that if we could lease these systems. Now, we were leasing systems back before it's even
What
done.
became part of the.
I don't know if you remember, Alarmex was Van Gas.
Yeah.
Okay, so Van Gas got into the alarm business with Alarmex, and they were installing these systems for $750, and everybody else was selling them for $1,200 to $2,000.
What year?
I'm going to say that was probably in maybe 78, 79. You can't hold me to
Okay,
this
that's-
because I'm getting old. It's been a long time ago. But
It was prior to the 80s.
it was prior to the 80s. And then so we started doing them for $700 to install them, and we were charging $24.50 a month, and everybody else was selling the systems for $1,500, $2,000, and they were charging $12 a month. And on the high side was $14 a month. But then they're saying $24.50, you'll never get it. But so we were selling two and leasing one, and then it went to where now we're leasing two and selling one because that was our money to buy the parts for the next job. And we kept doing that. And our 2450s, we're doing 3 to every one of theirs at $12 and $14. And
And you were roughly half price with the installation fee.
yeah, because we just wanted to get them interested.
Yeah. Do you know, I know it's way back then, but kind of where your break-even point was? Because
No,
you're making
who
it
cares?
back up on the monthly,
Who
right?
cared at that point?
It didn't
We were
matter.
selling a new job and the monthly was coming in. So.
Yeah.
But
And your customers stayed with you.
I still have. In fact, it's funny. I just talked to somebody, not even I can't think within the last week, who I actually told me you were literally one of my first guys. Oh, I know who it is. It was Lynn Cullington. Her husband, Webb Cullington, is literally one of our I'd say probably maybe the first 20 customers. Well, it's a small story, and this is going to be off track a little bit, but my son has married her sister's daughter. There was a triplet. So, we go back, and I knew them before they knew each other. And, but back then, so we're putting these in, and then Apple came out with that first little computer, and Larry was putting the billing on that Apple computer so that we could print out the statements and then put them in the envelopes and send them out. And we were working out of my mom's spare bedroom and garage. And I was living at home at the time, but because we were we had no money. We were starting with nothing, absolutely nothing. So we get up, and there's a light switch that when he plugged the computer in, well, if you flip the switch, he lost all the information, so you'd have to start all over.
Wow.
And we'd always forget to move it to the top one because it was on the bottom where the lamp was. And so I can't tell you how many times somebody walk in and shut off and you lose all of his information, have to re-enter it.
Whoa.
So when you say that Matson Alarm was developed, it was developed strictly from just kids had nothing else to do. And,
Was this in the
and
early
my
80s
dad
now?
said that it would be one of the biggest things in the 80s.
No,
And
this
he
was in the 80s now, right?
when we started, it was back in the 70s. But now we're into the 80s where me and Larry are partners. And we rented our first office from George Diversion, who is, owned some office complexes. And today he says we're the biggest success story. He still brags about us. But we rented one office that had kind of like a small reception area and then the office. And we rented just that room because we didn't know if we could make the payment that next month for the office space. So then it's like, every time a space would come up, we'd take that one, and then we'd take that one. So we ended up taking half this office complex. And it was funny because you go from one room to the next, it was different colors because we just cut a door and moved on. And so, and that was the hardest part, was trying to figure out, how we could do this, because it was expensive. We just didn't have any money. And then by the time the other companies, like, Gary Edmonds from Central Alarm, Paul Worsley from Valley Alarm, they had the association back then. And Fresno Alarm, and everybody belonged to it, but they wouldn't let us in because they didn't want us to be part of it.
There was a Mid-Cal way back.
Gary was president at one point. I think Paul Worsley was president, and but they wouldn't let us in until they finally figured out. And I left out a very important part. So back in 78, 79, we didn't have a contractor's license. So we did not, and we're doing everything basically nobody knew, and we were working off some guy's license that he let us use it, and then but we kind of just did our own things. So finally, when they realized that we didn't have our license, we were too been in it for so long, they just made us get the license. So we got the license.
Okay.
You could not, I don't think you could do it the way we did it today.
You couldn't repeat it?
I don't think so.
Now, somebody would turn you in for sure.
Yeah, well, today it was I believe in helping people because nobody would help me.
Yeah.
And I've offered to help a lot of companies. And Gary, when he was sick, I told him, I said, Gary, this business is killing you. Let me take it over. Just tell me what you want. I'll pay you. We'll take it over. We'll run it for you. And he said, he goes, I'm going to let the kids, because Peggy was going to work there and Mike his son was working there. And he said, I'm going to let them try to do it, because he had a good established business, but at that point we had already passed him, and they could not figure out how we were doing it. And the rumor was that my wife, Irene, that her dad was funding this. Or Larry's dad, Larry's wife's dad was funding us, but they could not figure out how we were getting the money to be able to lease these out. And they said they're going to go broke, and they kept waiting for us to go broke. But we had figured out we're getting a lot of little checks.
Yeah.
They were twice as much as everybody else was getting, and so it just made us strong. It just made us really strong. And we were put on the first alert, the President's Council, and me and Larry were, because we're 50%, we're partners. We were the only company that they allowed 2 people to be on the President's Council, because normally they just want 1 person from each company. And so we sat on that board for, I don't know, 20 years. When, Ivan Scher, he had faith in us. So Vince Adams tried for 2 years to get us to sign up to the First Alert program.
Okay, sure.
And I remember the day he was coming to our office, and we'd moved to the atrium, which was a big 3-story building, and there's an actual fire on the 3rd floor. One of the air conditioning caught on fire. So we evacuated the whole building, and the fire department came in, and we told them we can't leave because our central station's here, and we'll leave as soon as if it gets bad, but right now we can't. So they let us stay in the building, and they stood right there to find out. And here comes Vince Adams. He comes walking in the door, comes into the office. He said, well, we're ready to sign, but there's a fire. But he literally drove down Herndon chasing the fire trucks. So we always gave him a bad time about he chased the fire trucks in to get us to sign up for the First Alert. And so we are very big supporters of the First Alert. I mean, our program is.
So what year was that?
I'm going to say that would have been probably about 86.
Yeah, mid-80s and 80s. Okay.
And, but we were, you know, we were doing quite a few systems a month, and Ben Cornett invited us back to Florida when they came up with the Partners of Choice. And we were the only alarm company that he brought back there. And we just thought we were going back for a convention and stuff. And he said, he goes, take Matson Alarm, a little company there in Fresno, because Fresno's not a San Francisco or an LA. Or, it's a valley. But he said, these guys buy more wire, more parts, more comp panels, more, and was dedicated to the program. He says, because they're salespeople. He says, you need to build a relationship with all the companies out there, like, you know, and establish with Matson Alarm. So, but we've been well known around the industry for quite a while now.
Yeah.
Even myself, from the East Coast, I know who your company is.
Now, when Valley, which was really the lion at one
Paul
point,
Worsley, when he sold out to West Tech, and then his time came up, and he was going to, he was retiring from West Tech, but his daughter was still going to work for him. I said, Paul, you know, I don't know what you're going to do, but if you want to come to work for us and show me, you know, how to do things, because, you know, he was the king. I mean, they were the powerhouse.
Yeah.
And I go, you know, help us out. And he just looked at me and he kind of smiled and he goes, Mike, I don't think you and Larry need any help.
Mm-hmm.
And then let's see, there was
Now, as far as competition too, so that, you know, then you suddenly had West Tech there, but you're still the family business.
there was, you know, those were the days when I really didn't feel that they were my competition, that I was their competition.
Okay.
Because we had pretty much established ourselves as, there was a point where I never felt like we were competing against them as much as we were doing our thing and we were doing it. And I just wanted to do it better. I know that got into a few conversations with the ADT rep at the
I was going
time.
to touch that next. So, and then you still had ADT, and I think I was at National Guardian at the time. Then we ended up kind of in your backyard down there.
Yeah, and it's like, you know, it's not that I like the competition or welcome the competition, but I just felt that we were doing our own thing. And I didn't feel like there was, yeah, of course it's competition, it's our competitors and stuff, but I figured, you know, go back to the days with my mom and my dad. My mom said, if you believe in a product, it'll sell itself. And so that's what we believed in. That's what we did. And I was sitting in a meeting with Bob Racucci when he worked for PSI. And we were at one of these conventions, and he leans over to me and he says, you know, hey, I'm thinking about doing something on my own. And I said, well, we'll help you. And I said, you know, I'll set up all my connections with ADI, buy the vans to do whatever. I said, I'll help you. And so I told him, I said, you know, every day you wait is a day that you've missed. And so he calls me up the next day because I couldn't sleep last night because what you said. So, and Bob's a dear friend. He's a good friend.
Yeah. So let's go a little bit more now. I know because I've been to your place down there, and you drive through Fresno, and your sign is all over the place.
We are well known in Fresno, that's for sure.
Have you moved out beyond Fresno?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we had, our goal was to be the San Joaquin Valley.
Mhm.
And so we bought two companies up in the Lodi area. We bought a company in Turlock, Visalia, Bakersfield. And so we bought, I think about, I'm just going to throw out a number, about 18, 19 companies over the years. And it was funny because it's like, you know, we didn't know what we were doing, but
Well, obviously you did well.
we figured it out. It gave us a market, a footing, because it's a lot easier to have some kind of footing than it is to go up there and just try to start from scratch.
Yeah.
And so, but yeah, now we do stuff all over from Bakersfield to Sacramento is our daily. We've got stuff going on in those locations all over.
So your central
about 5
station
million.
is still?
Oh yeah, it's and I would invite anybody to come in to see our central station. It's pretty. And Ralph, one of these days, I'd like you to come and visit.
Love to come.
But when you came to the office, was it it was the one on the corner of the old bank building?
I think it, gee.
So anyhow,
Yeah.
about 5 years ago, we bought another building and we were going to move our central station into it. And when we were doing our central station, the move, we had to run two central stations side by side because you can't have one down. And so we're doing the testing and everything at the other central station and then dealing with the city. They kind of put us on hold.
Oh.
And so something that should have taken 2 months to build out, it took us about 10 months of running two central stations side by side.
Something.
And it was fine. But if you see our office now, it's pretty impressive because Larry and I live in our office, and I say live in it because that's where we go first thing in the morning. Larry's there all day. I'm out and about, and is where I end up. So we watch people come to work, and we watch people leave. But it's so we have a nice office, and it's a really nice office. And we're doing home automation right now, so we have a pretty cool. Looks like a living room when you go into our office, but it's one heck of a sound setup.
Is that used, you use that as your, is it?
We bring some people in to
Customers
do, yeah, so now, this is another thing that we've done, because Keith Baird and us, we did the Siren Song, which is a wine that we have made up in Napa, and it started out with one of the CAA meetings. We went over here to Crush Pad, and went in there, and we bought a barrel, which is 25 cases. And they made it for us, and we called it Siren Song because sirens are like music to us. And so we went the next year, because the wine was great, so let's do it again. So next year we went up to a winery up in Napa and asked them if they would do it. And so they said yeah, but then 2 years went by of doing it there, and we decided that one barrel wasn't enough, so we went to 2 barrels, and so so now we have 50 cases. And so Bart did, and a bunch of other people from all over the United States, they take a few cases here, but me and Keith are the ones that take the majority of it. And so then it's like, okay, now it's, everybody wants that again, so I told him, you better go to 3 barrels. So then he calls me up a couple days later. He goes, well, I think I kind of blew it. He goes, I got carried away. I went 4 barrels. So now we're getting 100 cases. And it's a good Napa wine. And then we did two barrels of a cab. So now it's 150 cases, which
Oh, goodness.
it's ridiculous.
So,
It's ridiculous. But the reason I brought up Siren Song is because when you come to my office to visit, I have I bought Pete Del Pezzo's building, which he was one of the owners of Pelco, and when Pelco sold out to Snyder,
Yes.
he built this man cave that was office, and he had this big warehouse where he kept his Ferraris, and he had it all painted for Ferraris, and he had a wine refrigerator, a big walk-in wine refrigerator, and he had a bar, and he had a Ferrari leather couch. And when we bought the building, we wanted the Ferrari leather couch. He said no, he would have given up the sale of the building because he was not going to get his couch. And so we went and we bought the building, and this room where his had this wine deal, this wine refrigerator, we were going to move it, but then it was going to cost too much to move it, and they said it'd probably have to destroy it to move it. So it's like, okay, we'll just leave it in there. So we walled that off, and we put in all of our servers and everything in that same room where he had his bar. And he had very expensive wines in there. And so now when you come to see my office, I show you the office, and I show you where we've built it all out in our service department. We were originally going to bring all of our trucks and stuff in there. That's why we bought it. But by the time that we dealt with the city and got everything on, we already filled it up. So it's like, well, we'll just keep the installations where they're at. And so now I take the customers through and show them what they're buying, what they're getting. We have the monitoring with the video walls and stuff and everything. And then I'll take them into the central station, and that's where the servers are. It's all glassed off, but you go in there, and then I have this wine refrigerator that has all this siren song, and I give the customers a couple bottles, and I say, the reason why it's called siren song because it's music to our ears. And so it's a sweet thing, and I don't know if you guys have had any of it because we are pretty generous around the industry.
We have some in Boston. Keith was kind enough to share it.
Yes, and so
It's traveled.
that is just it's a fun thing, and so
That's an alarming side business out of here.
Yeah.
I don't make money at it. It costs me money, that's for
Yeah.
sure, but
Yeah.
But it's a fun thing.
it's a fun thing.
Yeah, let me just ask you, now where we are at today with the business, where do you see yourself, going from here? I mean, it's just you want to continue to your kids,
Well, we have three other kids in the business right now.
Yeah, what, I'm sorry?
Three.
Three.
My son runs. He works in the sales, and then Larry's two daughters. They work in the hiring and the marketing.
Okay.
And so, where we see ourselves in the future is, this business is a funny business because some days you can't wait to leave, and the next time you wake up, you can't wait to get back to the office. So it's a lot of pressure, a lot of things you have to deal with, and mainly employees taking care of your customers. When a customer calls up and they're not happy, they're telling everybody that they're not happy.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've relayed to our people in service that when they call you, they're frustrated because they have an alarm going off or there's something. So of course they're going to be mad. And I said, all they want is somebody to fix their problem. So I go, they're not mad at you. They're not mad at us. They're mad because they got this thing going off. And all they want to know is, when are you going to fix this? I said, so help them. And I give everybody my cell phone number. All the customers have my cell.
That's right.
And I told them, I said, you don't call me for service, but if you're not being taken care of, then you call me. And I tell my office, somebody calls me, it's because they're not being taken care of. So if you don't take care of them, they have my phone number. And yes, they're all my friends. If they call me, it means you're not taking care of them. So I'm going to call you up and I'm going to ask you, okay, why aren't you taking care of them? Now take care of them. So I hardly ever get any calls anymore. It's the office is.
Mike,
we
can I
have a lot
ask
of good
a
people.
quick question?
Sure.
I think it's a little unique. So you've got a family business, two brothers, and it's an enigma because very rarely do partners or two brothers work well together, especially when they're married. There's always bickering. You seem to have that ideal partnership. What's the secret sauce in that?
It all looks good, and it is all good, but you always have to have somebody that's in charge. So Larry's the president, and if he makes a decision, I'll tell him my side of it, and we'll discuss it, and between the two of us, we kind of work it out. Right. The wives can come to lunch. We'll stop what we're doing, we'll go lunch, but they're not in the business at all. They're not allowed to see the business.
That's great, because that's...
And the reason why is because if you saw some of the stuff we did, you would say, why would you do that? And afterwards we ask ourselves, why would we do that? But we've tried a lot of things, and a lot of things seem not to make sense, but in the long run, they come around to making sense, and they are good decisions. We've made a lot of mistakes, but you know what? You don't survive in business without trying something, and it may work and it may not.
It also sounds like, because you grew up in a faith-based family, that you have a unique relationship with everyone too.
Yeah, my dad he was a preacher, and because we went to church every Sunday and twice during the week and stuff, as kids we kind of left that. So I mean, when I met my wife, I became Catholic, but my dad was he was a person that was kind. One time he had a gardener, and he had bought a new rototiller, and he was doing his garden, and he had some guys come by to do some work, and they asked him if they could borrow the rototiller, and so he said, yeah, no problem, just bring it back. And they never brought it back, and I laughed about it. I go, well, did you call the cops or anything? He goes, well, they probably needed it more than I did. And that's kind of guy he was. That was the kind of guy he was. And I try to do that. I try to be I try to be good to people. I just try to be good to them. That's all I can say.
You're a very kind gentleman, I would say. So why don't we just wrap up here?
Sure.
The floor is open for you. Is there any last thing that you'd like to discuss or say?
Well, there's challenges, and it is usually the employees that are the challenge. But if you're kind to people, if you're good to your employees, and I go into the office and I'm busy. I'm busy, but I go and I walk through, and if I have to go talk to our fire engineer, whatever, I have to walk by our service department, and I make sure that I say hi to everybody I can. And sometimes I am in the middle of a thought or something, and I won't say anything to them and walk by, and then it's like I come back and say, hey. So I want the employees to know that they're not doing this for me and Larry. They're doing it because it's a pretty good. I look at it as if we have 100 people, we're supporting 100 families, and we don't just send somebody home because we want to save a couple hours off the payroll. Everybody that works for us gets their full hours, and try not to pay you overtime because California's made it so tough on you but you can't find the people to work, so it's like it's a hard. So you got to pick and choose your jobs, and there's not very many customers that I haven't been able to make happy, but it's okay to fire a customer. And when they call me up and they say, you're not doing this, you're not doing that, I'd say, well, let me find out. I know nothing that's going on. Let me find out, and I'll go back, and I'll call you back. And I go back, and I listen to the conversations and stuff, and 90% of the time, my office is trying to do the right thing. They're being unreasonable. So I call them back. I say, look, listen to the recording, and this is what we're going to do. I don't blame them about you're not telling me the truth or anything. They know that what they told me isn't totally the truth.
Yeah.
And so I just tell them this is what they're going to do for them. And I said, the reason they're not taking care of you is because you won't let them take care of you. Then call me. And it works out pretty good.
Yeah.
Those are great final thoughts.
Yeah.
I think that you hit it right there. That's a great thought.
Larry, it's
Larry?
pleasure. Larry.
Larry, okay, this happens a lot. I answer to Larry too, because I know who they're thinking.
And I've known Mike for a long time.
That's my pleasure.
Thank you.